Here we go.
Welcome to Books You Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Jason.
And this is our discussion of the whole of Leviathan Wakes by something S.A. Corey. James S.A. Corey.
Which is really two dudes.
Yeah, it is two dudes. I forgot how to do the intro. It's been a while since I won the...
But even when I win, you did.
paper,
I mean,
scissors.
you did it. Now you just do
I know,
the
yeah.
extra stuff.
So anyways, if this is your first time joining us, here we go. Please stop the video because we're about to talk about this whole book. And it's just going to ruin everything. So go back and read the book. And then join us. And you can chat it up in the little discussion box below. We have 2 other videos going over... You know, we split the book into 3, that kind of thing. So anyways, if you're joining us live, chat it up in the little live chat. And we're already getting a lot of discussion about how it ended and what they think. And so that's a lot of fun. We are available on little old YouTube Music as a podcast. And we're on Instagram for the memes. We have tons of other books playlisted for you in the playlist section of our show on YouTube, or our channel on YouTube. We also have some like lo-fi vibes for you to read to. Those are nice. We have more of those coming.
Sure.
And a couple of other like little one-off fun things.
We're glad you're here. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know, why is it icky at the end?
I think maybe like all the tentacles and like the missing legs. Did you like Julie had no legs? She was just all tentacles, and she was the ship, and
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of icky.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So I don't think that it's weird that pretend Julie, imaginary Julie, became a thing. I think that I don't know, he was a very lonely guy. He did not have any real connections. And so it makes sense to me that as he did investigations, you know, the people became something in his mind. And this investigation came at a time when Miller had just absolutely nothing left. Mm-hmm. And so the Julie he learned about became a very real thing in his mind. Mm-hmm. And that was his anchor to being human and to a mission and to having value and worth. Yeah. And so I don't think that that's so weird. And then, you know, towards the end there, as he's listening to the sounds of Eros as it's fallen apart, it makes even more sense now that she became more and more real. Like when she touched his hand, he could almost feel it. He was hearing the machine, the ship that she is operating, hearing her thoughts, because she really is still alive through Eros, and he's hearing all that. So it just makes sense that it's like all up in his psyche. And
yeah, I don't disagree that like it is kind of weird. Like imagine you are Julie Mao and you have had this terribly traumatic thing happen to you where you become like a goo tentacle monster.
That
you
sucks.
have been blessed with deep sleep as you rocket a meteor or comet or whatever towards the Earth, right? Fantastic, good for you. And then some guy that you don't know, and not like it's so. Here's what's really interesting, I think, and I hadn't had this thought until just now. Number one, and I want to come back to like themes and stuff. I know we're starting right here at the end, but we got things to say. One of the themes of this book is like what is human and when is it not human?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like little there's no like major discussion of that where it's just like pages on pages, but it comes up over and over and over again. The same thing with Children of Time. Sort of like what is human really something more than just like the you know, the animal body that we have and like are these spiders human too? Anyway, whatever.
The sentience behind it.
But so what's weird about this scene with Miller meeting up with Julie Mao finally is it's like this dark what's the girl that bit the apple and fell asleep?
Snow White.
Snow White. It's a dark Snow White, right? Imagine Snow White falls asleep, and instead of waking up to Prince Charming to like take her away from the tower, she wakes up to a suicidal cop she is tentacles and they're going to crash into Venus, right? Like it's really interesting because there is this inversion of, I mean, it is the fairy tale story. Snow White does not know the knight in shining armor. She does not know Prince Charming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some guy just shows up to rescue her, and it's this weird, twisted fairy tale story, right? And that's what we have here.
It is very interesting.
Yeah. And I really am here for it.
Yeah. Well, you know, you don't know if she would have woken up at some point, you know, so it's nice that she's not alone.
Yeah.
She might not love him the way he thinks he loves her.
Yeah.
But they will have this new thing together, and apparently there is a thing.
Yeah. Well, they'll become one, I suppose. It's not exactly clear to me like why Julie is the thing, because like when she contracted the disease, it had already eaten several people, right? They had become the goo thing. And I guess the argument is that it hadn't quite learned the human body enough so that it couldn't be a sentient thing. Okay. And then, so he gets Julie, and then it absorbs all other sentient things to become massive tentacle Julie, which is fine, but like, why not just be a bunch of little tentacle people? Or, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been a bunch of different things. It chooses to be this one big thing. And that's not a problem. It's just, we should assume that Miller will become Julie, in the same way that everybody else on Eros has become Julie.
Because all the basic instinct of this organism is to crawl towards the radiation.
Yeah.
And so it'll all crawl towards where she is.
And she's like a hive mind, right?
And there was some comment that because she was the only one who got infected and then went somewhere else, that was like kind of a catalyst for changing the evolution of this, you know, goo. And so that's kind of interesting. You know, now its big ancestor is a traveler, you know.
Yeah, interesting. I think too that, like, you know, I do like the Miller story, and I do like that he finds Julie and then ends up, we don't know how it ends up, but whatever happens because, you know, in talking about like what is human, like, okay, fine, or Belcher's human, right? Or at what point do the Mormons on the Nauvoo become not human?
Like, they were so mad.
Yeah. Well, so I guess you can still go and get your ship because it's just cruising. It never hit anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
wasn't that something?
Yeah, that was funny. But like, there's kind of an argument to be said. Well, at what point is Miller still human? I get it. He's biologically human, but he has absolutely no connection to anybody. Nobody cares about him. He's unhinged. He's psychotic. He's rad riddled. He's all these different things, and his one connection still to humanity is Julie, this imaginary Julie, and it's the one thing that takes him. His one connection to humanity is what makes him not human in the end, because he becomes absorbed or whatever.
Dang, and him being rad riddled.
Yeah,
they just feasted. They were like, "Ooh, this guy." Yeah. So, very interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely still gross, and I like the grossness. I like the tentacles though. It's very sea fear, and it's very we talked about this last week. What am I looking for?
Nautical horror. I don't know.
Yeah, stuff like or like I like the tentacle thing.
Yeah.
I do like that.
I don't know. I mean, we can only describe alien life forms and alien viruses in a way that we already understand them, like worldly viruses, you know, and so that's all we have.
Yeah.
And that it made sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you ever read the Orson Scott Card wrote Ender's Game, and then there's like 7 more Ender's Games after that, which nobody ever reads, and they're okay. It's not as good as the first one, but it's maybe Speaker of the Dead or one of those.
I really want to read that one.
Yeah. There's a virus story in there, but it has sort of like a similar component, I think. And like space viruses are interesting, you know, like it is the thing that can cross the stars, you know.
Yeah. Well, we take for granted that like virus is life, you know, like that is a thing, and we tend to think of virus as something, it's an ick, it's a germ, it needs to be killed, you know, and usually in terms of what it does to us, yes, it needs to be killed, but it is life, and it is just trying to live.
Yeah, that doesn't make it not dangerous.
No, but it's just, so I guess my point of that is, you know, like, what is human and when are we no longer human? At some point we'll no longer be human. And even the proto guy, the
protogen guy, Dresden.
the protogen guy, seemed so willing for all that he had. He's like, well, yeah, we're just gonna release this bad boy, and we're giving you the stars. Yeah, but you won't be there because you're gonna be goo.
Yeah. Well, they didn't know that at the time, right? And that's arguably and so like the whole experiment thing makes more sense once you get into Eros again, where like it hadn't had enough people to learn what to do with people or whatever, right? Because there's this explanation of it's supposed to infest single-celled organisms and it found us, and so like okay, whatever, right? Like the Dresden guy ends up being correct in that you do have to like give it a bunch of people to figure out what it will do. That does not make it okay.
No.
But
I agreed with Miller.
Well, so Greg and everybody in the chat right now is talking about
Greg
is talking about Dresden, and I think Dresden's the whole conversation about Dresden is really interesting because while he was talking and while Miller is like, no, I killed him because I could see him talking you into it, I could feel him talking me into it. You know, and like not me realistically, but you know, if you were like, we have to, you know, crack some eggs to ensure the survival of the species, you know, this is something that comes up repeatedly in our sci-fis, and not maybe in our sci-fis, but in our real life as well. And what does that mean? What do you do? And you know, is there a greater obligation to the survival? Is there an obligation to the species that is greater than your obligation to the integrity of the will of the people who actually exist? Because, you know, Dresden could be doing all this and then a meteor could come out of nowhere and just blast the Earth to pieces and like, sorry, like it didn't work out, man.
Yeah. The whole time he was having his little old soliloquy, there's this book I read a gajillion years ago called Jude the Obscure, and I really liked it when I read it, but I could not tell you anything about it now, except for one quote. Yeah. He has this one quote in there that says, like, don't justify your bad behavior with like honorable reasons, or, you know, like you have to be careful about that. And that's all I could think of the whole time that guy was soliloquying. Yeah.
I think too that I don't know, I have this idea. I was talking to a friend of mine about this week, but like I have this idea that like no matter what you choose, you're just choosing a wrong choice. All the choices are wrong.
Yeah, you're just trying to choose the one that does the least damage to you.
Yeah. Well, usually that's what, and you should be doing the one that does the least damage, period, I think. And it's almost like a reverse like utilitarianism, I suppose. But you know, I don't buy into moral relativism. I don't buy into the idea that like it's okay for you and not for me because of like your culture or your position or whatever. I'm not here for that.
Good for the gander.
Yeah, I'm not here for that. But I am. But like, you know, there is a hierarchy of evils here, and killing 1 million people on like an asteroid somewhere is pretty high up there. You know. And so, does Miller do wrong by killing Dresden? The answer is like, yeah, probably. Like that, it seems to be what we would call murder, right? The chat has been discussing like the conversation about what Miller does, where he, you know, in his mind he's saving the ship. I don't disagree with that. It's still murder, and he still has to pay the price, which he does, and that is something that I love so much about this book, and about Miller's character in particular, who I think might come out as my favorite character. Slightly before Amos, because I love Amos, but you know, he did what he thought was necessary. He did the wrong thing to save everyone, and was then willing to pay the price for it. He had to die. He had to go. You know, if he didn't do it, Fred was going to do it. He was always going to pay this price for doing what he thought was right, and I think that so many stories people get like absolved. You know, like that you did the wrong thing for the right reason. It's cool, we forgive you. But that does not happen to Miller. And whenever they even try to save him, Holden kind of has this like conversation in his head where he's like, why am I doing this? I don't even like this guy. Yeah. Right. But it's because Holden is also committed to what he thinks is right. And he has this view of all life is sacred no matter what, which is part of why he does what I think is the dumbest part, where they move the nukes around. Just blow it up. They're on the way. Did you understand that part of the story? Okay, so Earth launches all their nukes.
Right.
At the transponders on the ships that are strapped to arrows. Mm-hmm. And Miller, who is a psychotic, suicidal person, is like, hey, I think I can talk Julie into moving this. And they're like, okay, cool, we'll buy you some time. It was always going to get blown up. We'll buy you some time.
Yeah.
But, like, you don't have to buy her time. You could just blow it up.
Yeah.
Like, why change this plan? But it's Holden's valuing of Miller's life,
right,
such as it is, and just possibly Julie's life, such as it is,
right,
to give them that chance.
Yeah, I mean, to give them one more.
Yeah. And the right answer was to blow it out of the sky.
Just be done. Yeah.
But I also have this view now, ever since our first book that we read for this, that you blow everything out of the sky. You don't ask questions. So.
Yes, what are they doing on Venus?
They're building some crystalline structure.
Yeah.
The chat was saying earlier that one of the things that the book got slow towards the end. I'm not sure that I felt that, but I like love the whole vibe that was at the end. But they also said that it ended in a good place and you didn't feel like you had to immediately read the next book. And I agree. Mm-hmm. This could absolutely be a one-time thing with no further stories, and it would be just fine.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more, though. There's like little mini stories in between some of the novels, and I think it's an interesting world, and the characters are good, and I liked. Shelby just said, "I love the joke about Holden having a bad history about broadcasting sensitive information." Yes. Yeah, and I love that he's so consistent.
Yeah,
they're like, well, if he hasn't already blasted this out, he's about to. And yeah, he is, because he wants everyone to know all the cards. And I can appreciate that. And then Holden wanted to give the, quote, people time to be good goo.
Yeah.
The goo needed to learn that they were being bad goo.
Yeah. I think, I mean, but, and that's just, it's so in line with Holden's character, right? Because, and so, I mean, that's a good point. Helping the nukes turn around is a long line in bad decisions done for the right reason.
Yeah.
And Holden or somebody has a conversation about how similar Holden and Miller really are. Mm-hmm. Because they're both doing what they believe is the right thing. They're both doing bad things, blasting things out to the universe, moving nukes around.
Well, they're just both so
but they're committed to what they
Yeah.
think is the right thing. Now, there are people who think they're doing the right thing that I absolutely disagree with, and that's fine. And you should fight those people. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me.
Very principled.
But yeah. Well, I think it was Shelby. I've lost it now. Said Shelby says the book club makes me feel better about villains being really convincing, and that's true. Villains are convincing. Mm-hmm. Nobody is out. Dresden does a fantastic job of selling it. He's very charismatic. He is in the video. He is when they meet him later. And Miller, I think, rightly assesses that if they leave him alive long enough, he's going to talk somebody into letting him go and keeping on going. And
yep.
But then I think back to the Nightingale, and I think about the Nazi characters there, right? They were villains. And Beck is a bad guy. He's a Nazi. I'm on board. But
it was hard to hate him.
It was hard to hate him. And, and with his little mission of what he was doing, you're like, okay, I see what you're doing, trying to control this area or whatever, right? I don't know. It's his responsibility to protect his men. I understand that. But it's harder for me to be sympathetic to Nazis than it is to Dresden for some reason. I don't know why. But and maybe it's because Dresden hasn't actually happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But how different? There is no sufficient difference between what Dresden thinks he is doing and what Nazis thought they were doing.
Someone made the comment that people have been finding reasons to shove people in ovens since ovens were invented.
Yes, that was in there. Yeah.
There was also this conversation after the Dresden thing that, we feel so bound to go to the stars. Mm-hmm. But Miller says, we're not.
Yeah, what if they don't want us?
We're really not worthy of it.
Yeah.
We think that we deserve it. We think we are entitled to it because we're smart enough to do it. Yeah. But look at us. we've made a mess of Eris, and we've made a mess of Ceres, and we've made a mess of the Belt, and
Yeah.
we made a mess of Mars. I mean, it's just...
Well, and it makes me wonder, like, what's going on with these aliens that shot this thing at us? You know, if they were gods billions of years ago, number one, I bet they're not around anymore.
Yeah.
You know? The fact that they made it to the point where they could create such a thing and blast it off is honestly kind of amazing, because I'm not sure that we'll pull it off. But
I wonder if we learn more about that in the other books.
I don't even know that it matters.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. Honestly, that bit kind of reminded me of Halo for some reason, and I don't expect anybody to know Halo lore, but in Halo there's an alien race that we're fighting against. But all of this is predicated on an older race that created everybody, and in a race older than that created the creators. And eventually, like, you meet basically like frozen versions of these like older creator gods. But whatever.
Do y'all think the authors named Jim Holden after Captain James T. Kirk of the original Star Trek?
Maybe.
I think so.
Maybe.
Jim. I don't remember what the situation was, and I don't remember who all was involved in the conversation, but somebody first named Jim, and somebody else like first named the person that first named Jim. And just like point out how awkward it was that these people were first naming each other. Yeah. And it made me laugh. There was like so many quick little funny things that happened in the book to like keep you gripped in reality.
I think that's one of the best things that they did was they really capture the reality of dialogue very well.
Yes.
Like really well.
At a couple of points, I pulled out of the story because I wasn't being pulled out of the story by how much dialogue there was. Usually it's so choppy when it's that much dialogue. This had a ton of dialogue.
I did notice, and I notice this sometimes for some reason, where anytime somebody says something, it says, he said, and then this said.
It's very,
Whenever you have that a lot back to back to back to back, I catch it. I'm not sure how to like avoid that. I think generally I would assume that the audience was intelligent enough to figure it out, but like I get that's not really a fair criticism. I don't think.
Well, and if you're listening, like you need something to let you know that this is another person talking. And I think that they did a really good job of evening that out and making it very pleasant to read.
Well, and so we both did this as an audiobook this time, and I had a blast listening to like the Belter Creole with all, just the slang that they used, and Miller would talk to them in like English, and they would use Belter Creole, and he understood what they were saying. They understood,
and it helped us understand what they were saying.
His little buddy, who has like almost a normal name but not quite.
I don't remember.
It doesn't matter.
Peggy.
But he would call him Papa, and anyway, just. The language I think is very interesting because
like Diego or something.
Yeah, Diogo, right? It's not Diego, it's Diogo. And if you have people who are living on Eros and they've been there for 5 generations, and most people don't get off of Eros, there was a comment that this is Miller's like 3rd time ever leaving, and depending on how much interaction you have with people who are at like the dockside bars and stuff like that, like your language is going to change very quickly. And at some point there was a mention of Arabic in there, and we've had mentions of Chinese and Hindi and things like that. And so I just think all that was really well done, very immersive, and something you don't hear a lot about. Like I think about like Fourth Wing. They go to all these islands and everybody just like talks like they do, and there's like no discussion at all of like slang really. And it's real. I mean, it's very cool. Very cool. The other thing I liked, somebody mentioned this earlier, but I liked the radio repetition, especially in the audiobook. They just did, they're going, and it was the creepiest way that you could possibly like have a space station just like slow down and die. And it felt very much like, I don't know, if you watched an anime or something with like a mech that was dying and it was conscious and it was just like breaking down, like it felt like that for chapters on chapters on chapters, and I really enjoyed it.
It reminded me, and I cannot remember the name of the movie / story, so hang on. But it's the famous ship. No, it's not a ship. It's a space station that gains sentience. I can't let you do that, Hal.
Yeah,
no, his name was Hal. What is that show called?
It's Space Odyssey.
Yeah. When that ship dies, it starts singing the Daisy song.
Yes, very similar to that. Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Daisy.
Well, and it's so similar that I think it pays a nice like homage to that without being so on the nose. You're like, I see what you're doing here.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I had a blast. Mostly with it, I say this all the time, but I like stories that are just stories, I don't think Holden is really a hero. He's your typical hero. He is the person who he is Frodo. He doesn't mean to. He gets caught up in this thing, and now he has to go and he's just swept along. He has like 3 chances where he could do something else, and he just keeps getting swept along. And Miller is not a hero. He is rightly assessed as a suicidal cop. Like that's what he is. And it's just kind of this story about people. There's no grand story. The people that are doing the grand things, that are trying to help Earth overcome Mars, or Mars overcome Earth, or get the belt their freedom, or whatever. Like, we never really meet those people. We get Fred. That's about as high up as we go. But like, there's no. And like, I don't know, maybe he could be in the future like a hero, but Holden's not really a hero. Miller's not really a hero.
No, but Holden's a leader.
He's a leader.
He's a good leader.
He's a good leader.
And that's all that matters. No one's a hero until like it's all over.
Yeah.
The end of the life.
Yeah.
That's when you're determined to be a hero.
Sure. Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very much Star Wars, not Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like much more action and adventure than like philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That little dog is howling out there.
He's mad about that. Me too. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, all told, I am absolutely willing to do the second one. It was in the hat for this pick, and it did not get picked, so someday we'll read it. But I agree with the club generally that there's no rush on that.
Yeah. I mean, the whole series is already complete, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just whenever we want to and as we enjoy it.
Yeah. Shelby, somebody mentioned the show, and we had thought about watching an episode last night and didn't. We ended up watching Boondock Saints. Say what you want, but like, there's some similarity there. I think with like, basically the Irish boys decide that they're gonna go take out the really bad guys, and there's some Miller in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I like that Alex had a lot more role in this last third of the book.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in the first couple of parts, he was just in name only, and I never really saw what he did. But
yeah, Amos is definitely like Naomi gets a lot of airtime, and she's cool. I'm kind of glad, I guess, that she and Holden end up together or whatever. I don't know. But Amos is fun. I really enjoy Amos, but you're right, Alex. One of my favorite conversations about Alex is when they're like going 7G or whatever the deal is, and he's like, all right, going on the juice. And Holden has this thought where he's like, Alex has like pilot brain, and he has like everything else brain, and he's gonna worry about like there's an alien here trying to kill us later, and
because
right now
that does not affect pilot brain.
Right, and right now he just got to go.
Yep,
he's got to put the speed. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah. That was a good explanation, because that's true. People like that with good training, they do compartmentalize. If it does not affect your actual task, it does not exist in your mind until the whole thing is over.
Yeah. It's a sign of good training, and Alex is well trained.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, the characters were great. They had lots of personality.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's always good to see characters actually die. Like real world consequences.
Yeah.
It was all good.
Yep.
Very enjoyable. I don't feel like emotionally attached to it like I did with Children of Time. This did remind me of Childhood's End. You know, they kind of were taken over by...
Yeah.
Like the children were
right.
merged into something else.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Sorry. If you haven't read that one from 1972.
This is definitely not as impactful to me as Remembrance of First Past or Children of Time. I agree with that. But it's, I don't know, I think it still is, it's the kind of thing I like to think about. The moral questions and the ethical questions of space travel. You know, we talk a lot in our science fiction about like the colonization narrative of sci-fi, and it's like necessarily a part of it. And what's interesting is like this is kind of a reverse, and that happens also in Remembrance of First Past. But you know, like they come here, and then what? You know.
Yeah, Alex wore a mechanical timepiece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun. I enjoyed it. Here we thought we had nothing to say, and I feel like we did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. We have plenty to talk about.
So what's our next book?
Our next book is by Leanne Moriarty. Here One Moment. She has so many.
Okay.
I think it's that one.
It's like a thriller?
I don't even remember anymore. But it sounded good when I put it in the hat. Yeah, Here One Moment.
Well, you know that feeling, though.
I know, I am totally traumatized, and I don't want to pick books anymore.
I was laughing whenever I booted this up to start the live because it's your comment on like the description was like, we need to leave the planet for a second.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like this was such an incredibly good palate cleanser.
Yes,
I'm glad we chose
I had
this.
forgotten all about the previous thing that we read. So let's see. Well, I was gonna give you a blurb. If you knew you were going to die, what would you do differently? There you go.
Okay.
That's the blurb.
Interesting. Sounds mom traum-y.
Sounds mom traum. Yeah. And we haven't had a mom traum in a while.
Yeah. All right, catching up on some of the chat.
Yeah.
Peggy asks, would you be okay with a high-functioning sociopath as a colleague? And in what field is that okay? Like, I don't know. I guess this is the wrong answer, but like, yeah, I guess I'm cool with it. I don't know.
Whoa, yeah. Dude, we didn't even talk about that whole science station.
They like brainwiped the people somehow to be sociopathic. And like they had to like get them under control because if they got bored, they try to kill each other.
I had trauma blocked all that out of my brain. That's horrifying. That's the true horror of this whole book, is that little space station.
Yeah, that was weird. There's probably a lot more sociopaths than we think. That's like the true answer. They're hard to detect and harder to diagnose, and then impossible to treat. So, I've probably only known 5 true sociopathic people off the top of my head.
Wild.
All right, Greg says this is the tip of the iceberg. The characters develop so much along the way, plus new main characters, ethics, actions, politics, sci-fi goodness. Okay, excellent. I had commented to one of your other comments, Greg, asking if it was worth continuing, and so I suppose the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because this also does remind me of the Red Rising series where we read 2 and we're like, I don't really care. I'm working on the 3rd. One of my inmates read the 3rd and loved it. And he did not care as much for the 2nd, and I think that was our general consensus. So I'm working on the 3rd on my own slowly.
The 3rd one starts with just intense, horrible torture violence. And
when he's like in the inside the table or whatever.
And it just goes on and on. I couldn't speed it up.
Yeah, it's like 3 chapters. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It was rough.
Yeah.
Midnight Library vibes. Yeah. Yeah. But it's come up a lot, like on lots of lists of things to read, and so hopefully it'll be good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm enjoying bouncing around. If I do too much sci-fi, then I get burned out on sci-fi. But we have been needing one, and this was a great answer to it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I guess I'm done. So we will put up a syllabus soon on our next book, and that will be we Do we have 3 weeks for that?
We got to talk about it.
Okay. We got some math to do. We'll figure it out. So.
It might be 3 weeks split over 4 weeks. Like 3 readings split over 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I remember now.
Or I'll see how long it is. It might just be 2 weeks, but...
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. One of the things I do appreciate about Red Rising is that, like, its profanity was fun. Yeah. And this was just, like, normal. And that's one of the things, just like they have Belter Creole, I think people would create their own...
Yeah.
Profanity, and I miss... Like when everybody in Fourth Wing just says what we would say, I don't... Why are they doing that? You know.
Yeah.
I also think it's funny that there are still people named Miller and like other last names like that because there are, I guarantee you, no Millers in space. None.
Right. They don't even have real bread. It's all, you know.
Or like somebody be like, "What does that mean?" And you'd be like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
You know, so.
Shelby's reading Westwood Giraffes.
Oh, fantastic.
Red.
Those are still our most watched book club videos.
I love that book.
It was really good. All right. Well, we thank everybody for being here today. We hope you have a great week, and we will see y'all next Sunday, same time, same place.
Happy reading.
See you then.